morning on this Wednesday hump day. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion. Wow, yesterday, what an interesting day we had. And I continue to say that, but each and every day does become more and more interesting. Yesterday, we started off calm. Everything looked pretty good, for the most part. And then we started to see a bit of a sell-off, make some sense, maybe some pressure on the markets. We got it into the red. And only about an hour and a half or so into the day, 90 minutes into the day, we suddenly had a shift. And that shift was a big acceleration back to the upside. And some of the movement that we had yesterday, absolutely incredible. You take a look at the NASDAQ and that explosive move to the upside, 90 minutes into the day, that was actually into the red. And then suddenly you look at the NASDAQ that starts to sprint to the upside and closed up 184 points, 1.7% move yesterday. That's a very, very swift, fast, just amazing. The velocity of that move was very, very powerful. Now, the Dow slips underneath 27,000. Things aren't looking so great. That also makes a turn and a burn and a move to the upside. And next thing you know, we're up about 140 points to close out the day, up about 0.5%. So what were some of the drivers yesterday that were really pushing the markets when we saw the acceleration start to become a part of what was working in the marketplace, and then it just seemed to feed on itself? But it was Nike, and of course, you start to look at a lot of those big tech names. Once again, Microsoft. You look at Apple. You look at Salesforce. You look at also over at Amgen and in the biotech world, and we've been talking about biotech, had a little bit of a slump the last couple of sessions, but Amgen with a nice, powerful move to the upside. You had Visa participating as well. Also, you look over at the NASDAQ and suddenly you see Lululemon with an absolute sprint to the upside. That was up 6% yesterday. Then Amazon followed up 5.5% to the upside. Zoom was strong all throughout the session. That was up about 5%. Skyworks on the chip side of things, the semiconductors, that up about 4%. We had social media, Twitter. Take a look at Snap. Those names moving to the upside. Twitter was up 7% yesterday. DR Horton, we talk about housing all the time and the strengths when people were saying there's only really 4 or 5 stocks, Pete, that are really moving the markets. No, there's not. There's all kinds of different sectors, and within those sectors, other stocks that have been working very well as well. And DR Horton being one of those, up about 4%. Lennar up about 4%. You get the idea. A nice, steady move across multiple sectors. The semiconductors ripped off of the lows, finished up less than 1%. But considering where they started the day and where they got pushed down to, a nice ripping move to the upside. Tech stocks moved up about 1.5% yesterday. I mentioned many of the various names that were moving. You know what didn't move? Financials. The disappointing performance of the financials just continues to be something that is very, very difficult, because you just wonder, when will that day come where there's back-to-back kind of days like we see in so many other different sectors. We aren't seeing that still. As a matter of fact, finishing out the day down 1% or more, Bank of America, JP Morgan, Citi, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, you get the idea. It was broad and it was across the financials, and they just have not been able to find any kind of footing at all. Consumer stocks ripping to the upside. I mentioned Nike. We talk about Amazon, Target, Dollar General, Lowe's. Those names also participating as well. So a great participation there. Matter of fact, you look over at the consumer discretionary, up about 2% yesterday. A really, really powerful move to the upside. So where was volatility with all of this? Still hanging around 26, 27. We'll call it in that sort of range. Fairly tight, constricted a little bit, but that's where we find ourselves right now. Volumes did slip yesterday. Volumes kind of fell off a cliff. We had just traded 30 plus million the day before on Monday. Tuesday, 25.7 million. Now, putting it in perspective, that's a huge number. In any other year, that is a monster number. We'd be jumping up and down going 25 million contracts. It's unbelievable. Well, in this market where we're averaging somewhere north of 30 million a day, 25.7 is kind of a little bit of a ho-hum part of things. And it didn't feel like it was that low yesterday. It did feel a little bit lower, but that was a significant drop-off, certainly about 8 million short of the previous day. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. That was well off of where we have been recently. So some of the names that were working yesterday in terms of some of the higher volumes, you had Apple up not quite 2 million, 1.9 million contracts, and then it was a big drop. Tesla didn't crack a million contracts, 900,000 there. Facebook about 380,000, and then rounding up the top four, we'll give you Microsoft about 330,000 contracts trading there. So today, jumping into today now real quick, Pretty interesting. We look at the markets, and in the pre-market, we had a pretty solid move to the upside, a really solid moving to the upside. We're already pulling off of that, but I'll get into that in just a second. We were indicated up about 190 points, then about 170 points. We opened the day, we were quickly up about 120 points, and still pretty strong. A lot of that powering off of Nike, which was up 12% out of the gates. I mean, just an amazing move to the upside out of Nike, and for all the right reasons. I'll talk about that in just a second, but I'm going to give you a quick update because it has changed. By the way, we were looking at the NASDAQ in the pre-market. That was relatively flat, and then it got negative fairly quickly. Now it's getting negative a little bit faster. As a matter of fact, down about 0.5%, down about 50 points right now for the NASDAQ. And as a matter of fact, the Dow has given back a lot of that early gain. It's given back at least 100 points of it. We're up about 72 points right now, and I'm showing the VIX right around 26.5. So as we talked about, 26, 27 seems to be where we find ourselves. Nike, the earnings absolutely destroyed what the expectations were. That's why you're seeing the move that you're seeing. Also, geographies. They seem to be working in every geography. The most important one, however, is digital. And those digital sales numbers up to 80%. That's an amazing number for a very mature, big, massive company. And they needed to show the strength that they've got. They absolutely delivered. So hats off to Nike for an incredible report. What else was working this morning in terms of the Dow was J&J. Now, Johnson & Johnson's an interesting name, and one of the reasons right now that a lot of focus is on a lot of these different names in the pharmaceutical space, vaccines, and they are now entering their phase 3 for their vaccine for corona. So upon that, a lot of interest right there, and we're watching J&J with a pretty nice performance early. Industrial started off the day pretty nice. We'll have to see if that's part of what's giving some of this back right now, but Boeing, Caterpillar, 3M all looked pretty strong early on. And then on the other side, when you look over at NASDAQ names, once again, Lulu just continues to be strong. Maybe on the back. Yesterday it was on Lulu. Today, maybe it's on the back of Nike, just following along with Nike, getting pulled up along with that. But a big, massive move. This is a stock that was well under 300 not too terribly long, just days ago. And now here we are approaching 3.25. So it gives you a little idea how fast, how rapid some of these moves really can be to the upside. So early on, what was really working in these markets, airlines, cruise ships, casinos, hotels, all in the green, all about 2% or higher. You had Marriott, you had American, you had United, you had all kinds of different participation. Wynn, another one of those names. Semiconductors, kind of spotty, but some of those names really were working early on to the upside. We had Micron, you had Western Digital, some of those names with a nice powerful move to the upside. I believe Skyworks was one of those participating pretty nicely as well. So we'd seen some strength yesterday around social media as well, not just the chips, but we had some strength. Twitter, Snap, both having pretty strong days yesterday. And that kind of leads right into some unusual option activity for today. I'm going to give you Twitter. Now, as we have already gotten into the political season, but as we get closer and closer to the vote, November 3rd, that's going to be pretty interesting. And as we get closer to that, obviously ads are going to continue to go and flow. And some of these social media names, obviously, will be partaking in some of that from the advertising, some of the dollars there. So Twitter, really interesting because this is a name that's been really moving to the upside, had a pretty nice, strong move. It's trading just underneath $45 a share when these two different hits that we had. So the first one, the bigger of the two. These expire Friday, September 25th. Remember that, Friday, very, very soon. Today is hump day, it's Wednesday. These expire Friday. You got 3 full days, today, Thursday, Friday, and they got to work. So will they work? Well, they're right at the money. So any move to the upside, and these have potential. The 7,000 of these September 45 calls, they started out at 36 cents. By the time they were done buying, because 7,000 of them, they didn't fill all at one price. They started off at 36 cents, got all the way up to about $1, let's call it. And on top of that, 2 weeks from, or a week and a half from now, October 2nd, we've got the 45 calls getting bought also, about 3,400 of those. So very aggressive buying that we're seeing approaching into Twitter. Can Twitter break through 45 and make a move to the upside? If so, these options certainly have a great opportunity to start exploding to the upside, depending on implied volatility and all of that, which is a very important point that I want to point out. If you understand all the mechanics of options, and when I say that, I mean, do you understand all the various Greeks and what they might mean? Vega and gamma and theta and all these various things, all very important. If you understand the Greeks, you understand a lot more and gives you much better opportunity for success. We talk about it all the time. Market rebellion, get educated. Our guys will do it. it's definitely worth whatever the investment might be, because you've got to have an education to understand what you're doing, or you're going to have a bad experience. You're going to be very angry about your experience in the derivatives world. We don't want that. We want people to have the knowledge so they have a better opportunity, nothing promised, but a better opportunity for success, and depending on discipline and everything else that goes into that factor. Folks, have a great day of trading. Look forward to seeing you today. I will not see you on any of the shows, but we might see each other later on in some podcasts later on. Have a great day.